You know that old saying, finders keepers, losers weepers? We all heard it on the playground. But what if you actually found a wallet full of cash? Would that schoolyard rule really hold up in a court of law? Well, that's what we're going to dig into.
Okay, just imagine this. You're walking along and you spot a wallet on the ground. You open it up and it is absolutely stuffed with cash. No ID, no cards, nothing. So, is it yours? What does the law actually say you can do? Well, it turns out the answer has less to do with the fact that you found it and a whole lot more to do with where you were and who you were when it happened.
To really see how this all plays out, let's walk through a story based on a real-world situation. So, let's meet Fran. Fran works as an airline cleaner, and one day, she's on a plane doing her job and finds a wallet. And we're not talking a few bucks. It is filled with a ton of cash. But there's no identification. The original owner is long gone.
So Fran, naturally, claims the money. But then her employer, the airline, steps in and says, "Whoa, not so fast. You found that on our plane while you were on our clock." And right there, that sets up our central legal battle, the finder versus the owner of the property where it was found.
Now, on the surface, you'd think the law would be on Fran's side. The main idea here is something called possessory title. And all that fancy term really means is that when you find something, you get a legal right to it that's better than pretty much anyone else's, except of course for the person who actually lost it in the first place.
And get this is not some new idea. This whole principle was laid out in a super famous case way back in 1722. So for 300 years, the law has recognized the rights of the finder. So that's it, right? Case closed for Fran? Well, not exactly.
And here's where it all gets a little tricky. There are two huge exceptions to that finders keepers rule that can totally change the outcome for Fran. The first one has to do with where the wallet was found, and the second is all about who found it, specifically if they were on the job. So to really understand how these exceptions work, let's run a little experiment. We're going to put Fran in 3 slightly different situations and see how the verdict changes each time.
All right, this is our starting point. Scenario 1. Fran is on the clock. She's doing her job as an airline cleaner when she finds that wallet stuffed down the back of a seat.
The big question a court is going to ask here is this: was her job the effective cause of her finding the wallet? In other words, did she only find the wallet because of her job?
And in this case, yeah, it's a clear yes. She would not have been on that plane, looking in that specific seat, if it wasn't for her job. And because of that, the law gives her employer, the airliner, the stronger claim.
Okay, let's change the facts up a bit. For scenario 2, what if Fran wasn't an employee at all? Let's just say she's a regular passenger who happens to find the wallet on her flight. Now who gets it?
So, this brings us to that other major exception we talked about. Since she's not an employee, the test changes. Now the court has to ask, does the airline show a manifest intention to exercise control over the aircraft? Basically, are they so in charge of that space that they effectively have possession of everything inside it, including lost items?
And the answer, which might surprise you, is yes. An airline has a ton of control over its aircraft. And because of that, a court would probably rule that they have constructive possession of the wallet. So even as a passenger, Fran loses out. The airline keeps the cash.
All right, let's try one last scenario. This one's a little more nuanced. What if Fran is an airline employee, but she's a mechanic, not a cleaner? And while she's checking an air vent, a place you'd never normally look for lost stuff, she finds the wallet completely by accident. The law here makes a really fine distinction. Was her job the direct cause of her finding it, or was it just incidental? Meaning, she just happened to be at work when she found it. If it was just incidental, she might actually have a claim. But once again, the airline wins. Because her job as a mechanic required her to be in that specific part of the plane, her employment is still seen as directly connected to the discovery. It wasn't just a happy accident.
So, after all that, what do we learn? It kind of seems like no matter what Fran does, she walks away empty-handed. Let's just summarize why.
You can really see the pattern here. When she's a cleaner, her job was the cause. When she's a passenger, the airline had control of the space. And even as a mechanic, her job was still not considered incidental. In every single one of these cases, the legal system favors the property owner or the employer.
So, when it all comes down to it, simply being the person who spots a lost item, that isn't what matters most in the eyes of the law. It's the context, where you found it, and who you were when you found it. Those are the things that really decide who gets to keep it.
And that's because those two big exceptions we talked about,
Finding something while you're working or on highly controlled private property, they are just incredibly powerful. They almost always override that basic finders keepers idea.
So this leaves us with a final thought. If finders keepers is more of a myth than a legal reality, at least in these common situations, what's the real rule we should follow? Well, maybe it's simpler. Always try to turn it in, because legally the house, or in this case the airline, almost always wins.